Hey everyone, I'm Danny Rivera Jr. and you're watching Rights Watch. All right. Yesterday, the Department of Veteran Affairs made one of the most aggressive anti-union moves in modern federal history, canceling every collective bargaining agreement covering tens of thousands of federal workers across the country. They say it's good for veterans. They say unions are in the way. They say that we are the problem, but we know the truth. This isn't about helping veterans. It's about silencing workers. So today, I'm joined by Andrew Weeks and President John Hetzel. Andrew Weeks is a federal labor attorney, and John Hetzel is the president of AFGE Local 1133. So I'm very blessed and excited to have you both here today. And we have a very important, very topic that we have to discuss. So thank you both for being here today.
Thank you, Danny.
Thanks so much, Danny. I mean, I am excited. It's my first show I've done with John. I'm just really unhappy that it's under these circumstances where this administration's destroyed federal employee bargaining unit rights, like it's tried to destroy so many other things: civil rights, the Constitution, the economy, and the Epstein files. But here we are. So we're on the podcast, and today we're going to podcast through it. Tomorrow we fight. Today we're going to podcast through it together.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And you're right. And we're facing an administration who wants to silence people. They don't want the voices of the weak. They don't want the voices of those who need it the most. They just want silence, compliance, and just deal with whatever we want to do without any kind of due process, without any kind of rights, without any kind of anything. Really, it's more of an authoritarian kind of government that we're facing in nowadays, which is very sad, but it is the reality that we're living on. So I just wanted to start with you both. Maybe John, can you please give us an insight on your first reactions to this cancellation of our contract with the VA?
I'm really stunned by it. It's been an emotional roller coaster for the last 24 hours. I think, like Andrew just said, one of my favorite labor attorneys there, that we've clearly been under attack by this administration since they took office, and it's very discouraging to me to know he hasn't even been in office for a year. And the amount of chaos and destruction that he has caused is astounding. Most people know I've been in this business for over 3 decades, and I've never seen anything like it in my life. But to get to the point of your question, right? The reason I was really shocked about this, right, is that even though that Trump put out the executive order, saying that they were going to do this and that, Office of Personnel Management, which essentially runs the government, gave out guidance to say, do not do this. Do not rip up the contracts until litigation plays out. And clearly, Secretary Collins decided to throw caution to the wind and tear up our contracts yesterday. So I think it's outrageous.
Yeah, they're like little kids in a Christmas day. They feel they've been waiting for this gift of taking away the CBA, and they're just unwrapping it before, like the night before Christmas. Like it's just the thing that they were waiting for. But it sounds like they're still going behind OPM's guidance and still going through with it, although OPM clearly advised against it. So it is baffling what's going on, but it's not the first time they've gone after a contract. It's not the first time that they've tried to do this. And more importantly, it's not the first time that this specific administration is responsible for something similar to this, right, John? Now you've been president for,
but yes and no,
right?
Okay, because that's kind of a tricky question. they made attempts to go after parts and aspects of the contract in the past. And what I mean by that is like official time,
Yeah.
space, that. But they never really were able to like try to invalidate the entire contract. Understand AFG, the AFGE and VA contract is a 308-page document that governs everything that happens with employees and Andrew can attest to this, from how they're disciplined to how they're evaluated to when they get their breaks and things like that. So every aspect of their working conditions, right, have essentially been ripped up by the Secretary of Veterans Affairs, right? And we'll talk, I'm sure, a little bit in this podcast about what we can talk about right now, right, about avenues of moving forward,
Yeah.
and things like that. But I think it's important that people know, right, that this flies directly in the face of what Office of Personnel Management instructed VA to do.
Right.
Right. And Secretary Collins has chosen to affect over 320,000 employees by saying you no longer have these rights,
Right. And
right, under the contract,
yeah,
and that AFGE is no longer the sole representative of these
of the VA.
these employees.
Right. So now this is something that I wanted to talk about, because I think last week, or actually it was in last week, it was not so long ago, Andrew and I spoke about the court's decision. And Andrew, thank you so much, man, because this is the second emergency podcast in a week that you've made it here. And I mean, it's just amazing, but it's terrible that it's under these circumstances.
It was 3 days ago. Feels like 3 weeks.
Right.
Administration, but
every day under this administration feels like an eternity. But going on forward, we spoke a couple of days about the Court of Appeals decision. Do you think they're just jumping the gun on this? Do you think that they've got a basis to do these moves so quickly? And if they use this as a basis for that?
Well, it's interesting because the press release, and I'm going off the VA press release, which I think is what we're all kind of going off of.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't cite.
It does not.
Anything having to do with that order or the basis upon which they allowed that they overturned that preliminary injunction. They stayed that preliminary injunction. It
Right.
doesn't cite any of that. And it actually, instead of saying anything about national security, which is what that was about, the press release actually says, if you go down to the bottom of it, you have it pulled up.
I got it pulled up here.
Go down to the bottom. The last quote before background. Too often, unions that represent VA employees fight against the best interests of veterans while protecting and rewarding bad workers. And then it says under background, VA employee unions have repeatedly opposed significant bipartisan VA reforms and rewarded bad employees for misconduct. So to me, it sounds to me exactly like the Ninth Circuit said eliminating federal contracts wasn't about. They said, well, he was going to do it anyways, national security concerns. And
Sure.
Now we have them eliminating it. It wasn't about retaliation. It was national security was going to do it anyways. Now we have a press release that says nothing about national security,
Right.
and literally says it's about retaliation right in the middle of that. Further example, to me, and I would argue this to the Ninth Circuit too, if I was in front of them. But further example is this exception we have for firefighters and law enforcement and these specific exceptions. So we're recognizing that actually the ones who actually do the security, unions make them stronger. Unions help them. Unions make law enforcement and firefighting better. But you're saying it doesn't for no apparent reason. Both can't be true.
Right.
Either unions make everybody stronger, and this is retaliation. It's not about national security, or unions don't make people stronger, and you should cancel law enforcement as well. But, the hypocrisy is not something new. The double standard is nothing new. That's what we've seen from this administration time and time again, unfortunately.
I mean, and doesn't it make sense that probably police officers and firefighters have more to do with national security than a poor old nurse who's walking around the halls helping a patient out? I mean, how does that make sense? How is that a national security issue when you have actual people that work in that realm and you're saying they're not excluded from this, just about everybody else?
Right. And go ahead, John. Sorry.
No, it's okay. I was just going to say that just to kind of expound on what you said, Andrew, this is clearly issues of retaliation. First thing, if you look at, right, he didn't go after all unions. He went after the unions that have successfully fought against him and disastrous anti-veteran recommendations, right? Things like the Heirs Commission closing down hospitals, things like that. Clearly this is motivated by that. Everything else is nonsense. And I'm glad that you pointed that out, that because, let's call this what it is. And I was telling Danny earlier, I take offense to Secretary Collins as a veteran. And him being a veteran, right, that he makes statements like this. And I did a little bit more research with him talking to CNN and some other things, but expounding a little more on what you said about, this is taking away from care of the veterans, even things like, the union's small offices, like one or two rooms they may have, is taking away space that can be used to care for the veterans. They made up this number of 750,000 hours last year that were spent on official time. I don't know where they even got that from. Somebody probably pulled that number out of their rear end, because I'm not even sure where that is. But that to go into the statement that you made on his actual press statement, saying we're interfering. And remember, a lot of Veterans Administration are vets serving vets, right?
Yeah.
But we're interfering in the veterans getting their care is the most ridiculous, ludicrous thing I've ever heard. And I take offense to Secretary Collins saying that. And I'm a veteran, I can say that.
Yes, and I did want to go into some of the things that they pointed out on this article, on the reasoning as to why they're claiming that this is good for veterans. And we can all agree this is not good for any veterans, for any family members, for anybody. And they failed to mention the employees because they know this is not good for the employees, but they don't care about the employees. And not only that, they don't care about the veterans. It's only just a facade to say that they care and this is good for them. But I wanted to touch on the specific points that they pointed out in this article, so we can talk to it about a little more, because I think it's important that people understand this is very misleading. Their claims are very misleading. Their claims paint a picture of the union like of something that it's really not, in the hopes that people buy it, and then people just give up on unions completely. They give up on bargaining rights completely. And then and there's an old saying, you never know what you have until you've lost it. And I am a firm believer on that. And what I want to avoid through, us, whether it's us talking here, me talking to people around somewhere else, or, all I want to do to avoid is for people to come down to a point where when they realize, oh man, we really needed a union. We really needed bargaining rights. And I think that we're getting close to the point if people start giving up. So I want to make it clear for people that are watching this show, do not give up. And this is not the time to give up for the union. And I spoke with John about this earlier. This is really the time to become a member of a union. And I'm not speaking on behalf of AFGE at this time. I'm talking, as the host of Rights Watch at this time, right? Like I'll let John talk as union president and his capacity. But I'm not running some kind of commercial for AFGE. What I'm trying to say is this is the time for us to gather together as a fellow bargaining unit employee to join a union, because this is the only way that we have to fight. And here are some of the things that they've pointed out on their statements that we need to clarify. So in the first one is, this decision is good news for veterans, families, caregivers, and survivors. The DA claims that canceling union contracts will improve services by removing barriers like union protections. And I want to get your input as to, how is this decision good for veterans? How is this decision good for families? And my argument is it's not, but I want to hear your perspective on it.
John, you want to take that, or you want me to give a first stab and then you follow up?
You can go ahead, Andrew.
Okay.
I'll follow up with you.
I mean, I can just say two things. And I think it relates to what you were saying earlier, John, is that let me just go in order. I got a little, John, when you were saying political retaliation, of course, is what it is. I mean, you're absolutely right. And it's interesting because it's the same thing they've done to law firms. Law firms that have opposed them, they've gone after too.
Exactly the same, Andrew.
And it's comical to me because for an administration that ran on, we're going to depoliticize this process. We're not going to, the politicization of lawyers and the DOJ and the political retaliation, they just cried and cried about that all of 2021 through 2024. And now, aren't they sure engaging in more political retribution and retaliation than, I mean, I've seen since, I've probably been a voting age. I can't say for before then, but since I've been a voting age, it's probably more political retaliation than I've ever seen. And frankly, it comes down to what we were talking about. Why aren't they doing it with law enforcement? Because strong union lets a law enforcement officer do his job, no matter what the political pressures are or the pressures are. And that lets the law enforcement do their job. Likewise, a strong union lets medical staff do their job without worrying about stuff. I represent a lot of whistleblowers. I've represented a lot of whistleblowers pointing out patient safety issues at the VA and being fired. And you know what? One of the biggest deterrents to retaliating against somebody, to nurses and doctors and medical professionals being in fear of voicing, protecting the veterans, protecting the patients, and being able to not be in fear of that they're going to be fired just for trying to help the patients. It's the unions. It's the unions that are there protecting people. And the fact that they're acting like that's not the case. No, now without unions, you might think twice about reporting that patient safety issue. You might think twice about doing what's best patient, no matter how it affects you personally, because you don't have that added layer of protection. So no, this is horrible for the veterans. Horrible. And beyond that, one last thing, John, and I'm gonna let you take over because I know you got thoughts too on this. But one last thing is going back to that press statement where they say, oh, they've allowed over 100 VA employees to be reinstated. Oh, this is so horrible. There's 400,000 employees there. Over 100 employees. That's not very many to be reinstated for as many as are fired. And what I found out, and I know you've seen it too, John, and Danny, in your time with the union, you've seen it. If you're a poor performer, you're not likely to be reinstated. If you are accused of misconduct or something happened and you're trying to get reinstated and they're going over those Douglas factors or the Title 38 aggravating mitigating factors, which are the same, whatever they're doing, if they're going over those factors to reinstate you, performance is one of them, and past performance is one of them. And generally, I guarantee you that of those 100 people, most of them were very high performers, and that the union helped keep the highest, best performers there serving our veterans rather than the other way around. So I apologize for the rant, but I feel very strongly on that.
100%, Andrew. You're 100% on the mark. One thing I would add to it, okay, and this is not just VA. This is any business, okay? Any business, okay? If your employees are completely unhappy and feel under the thumb, right? they're not going to perform very well for you.
Yeah.
Okay, it's against the best interest, right, of what we're saying. Sort of like happy wife, happy life, happy work, force, good production, right? And they're not really, that's not what we're talking about, at all here. It's a morale, I would argue, and Danny probably could speak to this as well, being an active nurse, right? Morale has not been the best, as of late, in the VA administration. And I think this just goes miles ahead, right, to harm. And what are we going to do? We've got an issue with recruitment and retention right now, right, of keeping people. But when they have nobody, right, or they perceive, I should say, they have nobody protecting them, and that what is the reason for them coming to us, for staying, with us? So, and again, going back to what we were saying earlier, right? I think, and I think Danny mentioned this, right? I think this is a concerted effort by the administration to put out bad press on the unions. I think it's untrue. And I'm going to cite this, right? Your United States Congress felt it was important enough that unions were critical enough in the running of the government to what, Andrew? Put it into the law, into the statute, to say it is better to have labor organizations. Why? It saves us money. We don't have to go to litigation. These are all things that are being left out.
Yeah.
Labor relations solves a lot of things, which they've done away with, clearly even before this, in our agency, labor relations. But all these things help promote a more efficient, better workforce. And what does that do? That helps us better serve our veterans. So what they're telling us, what they're feeding us in this story is not only disingenuous, right? But they're not even giving the true information about how, what unions do, how this, will affect things, and we know as representatives how agencies have the upper hand anyway, right? And have a tendency to want to, try to do what they can do anyway. What happens when the rules are gone and the gloves are off? You don't think that bargaining unit employees are going to be steamrolled by these agencies? Please, So again, I think it's an insulting of intelligence to insinuate that somehow the unions are bad, right, for veterans care and veterans affairs. And I think, again, I'm entitled to speak because I'm both of them.
Yes.
All right. I'm a labor leader and I'm a veteran. So I think I have a right to say so, when I think it's nonsense.
Right.
And I'm going to call BS and I'm smelling it.
And you're a labor
BS.
leader, John. You're not a labor boss. You're a labor leader. And I can attest to this because, John is my, I will say my leader. I'm not going to say my boss because in reality,
makes it sound like the mob.
It makes it sound like the mob. But
we're union bosses.
Yeah, but in reality, a boss doesn't lead by example. A leader does. A leader leads by example. And when they call us, and when they call people like you, like others that work in the union, that are leaders that fight for us, when they call you a boss, first they're trying to paint you as some kind of mafia boss. Secondly, they're trying to paint a dark and obscure picture. I mean, I don't even call my own manager my boss. Because it has some dark undertone to it. So. Really, all they're trying to do is they're painting a picture of us in a way that they want to make people believe that we are the ones who are making harm to the facilities. And ultimately, going back to the main point, it is not good. This is not good for our veterans. It is not good for their families, and ultimately, if they strip away these rights, how in the world do medical center directors where are they going to find the time to hear all of the different grievances that employees now are going to have to take to them? Because there's no negotiated grievance procedure that they can go through the different steps. They don't have to go, and I'm not going to get into the specifics of how AFGE is going to handle it. We need guidance on that, and I need to be clear on that. But go ahead, Andrew.
Based on my experience with medical directors, it's not a problem. They're just going to
Stamp. They don't have the time.
Denied, fired.
Yes. They don't have the time.
And frankly, I've deposed some medical directors who literally say they do that anyways.
Exactly. There you go.
But can I say one thing? Because
yes.
John, you made an important point about the effect on morale, not having the unions will have in morale. And I'm not like a healthcare researcher, but I can Google 1,000 articles talking about how having joyful nurses, having high morale, professional autonomy, like nurses in a good working environment improves patient care. There's a direct correlation. Exactly. So that's another way that actually like unions are helping patients, not the other way around, right?
Exactly.
Right.
This is positive.
And Andrew, just to add to that, I say this all the time, right? And even, our management would even agree with this, right? When sometimes employees do wrong, right? Just like sometimes the agency does wrong. And the union, especially our local, has never shied away from, we're remiss, right? If we know an employee is not performing properly or going in a proper direction, if we don't, so we're not afraid to have conversations with those employees, right? To try to circumvent the agency having to take action or, things going further than that, and I think sometimes people don't consider, that aspect of it, how much really the union diffuses a lot of times, and again, one thing we haven't even talked about is the union's education. I know our local is big on it, on educating our employees and the community and, the hospital about, rights, about benefits, about, things like that. It's critically important. Andrew, I want to ask you a real quick question because I've been thinking about this, right? I've been thinking about this particular set of concerted attacks, okay, which I think I had a conversation with you a little bit about this, but I think it was smarter than the last series of attacks with this administration previously. And what I mean about that is, right, they came after very specific things, like I said earlier, right, the official time and the space. Right. This time, what did they do initially? They came after the whole house because they came after us financially by canceling the dues deduction, right? Which essentially was very difficult, not only for the locals but for AFGE. So you go after the money, right? Because if you're not solvent, you can't keep running your business. So clearly that was smart. And then instead of picking out aspects of the contract, they just said, forget the whole thing. Right on top of it. So I mean, it's almost like trying to force the house to crumble, like playing Jenga, right? And they're wanting it to collapse in because if you're not solvent and you can't keep the business running, right? Then you have members getting out because of fork in the road, early out. So we lose more membership in addition to the dues deduction, right? Which is really starting to cripple the ability to be able to do what we do. So I mean, and that along with the whitewashing of the union and painting us to be, the bad guys, I mean, it's really a good concerted effort, isn't it? Into how to attack somebody.
They learned their lessons the first time. And the second time, they have a better playbook for how to insert this authoritarian government. They literally have a better playbook. Not even now we've gotten totally political on this show, and that's fine because that's the nature of it. Because we're just looking out for workers. We talked last time. Hey, even Marjorie Taylor Greene said, "Is the Republican Party really for workers?" So
I love that.
some people are realizing like actually it was just a lot of rhetoric. They're not really about the workers,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
they've been smart on just deny, deny, deny. The way they push the media, even and then when you get to the political and legal wrangling, they've outmaneuvered the other side. I mean, you even look at we have this Supreme Court that's just rubber stamping clearly horrible rulings, clearly like they're issuing stuff that's against the law, against the Constitution. They're the Supreme Court though, so they make the law, so they're able to do it. And what are they doing it on? They're doing it on a 5-3, a 6-3 basis, right?
Yes.
It'd be different though. Think of this: at the end of Obama's term, President Obama, at the end of his term, they made it wait like almost a year, an unprecedented amount of time, where they refused to put Merrick Garland in as the next Supreme Court justice and hold a vote on it. And they
Yes.
rolled that for an unprecedented amount of time to put in their pick. And then right at the end of Trump's term, right at the end of his first term, they steamroll to pick through in an unprecedented amount of time. So they make this like year-long wait unprecedented, and then in like 3 weeks, against the very logic before, they're like it needs to be the next president. Now it doesn't need to be the next president. We're ramrodding Justice Barrett in. I mean, right there you go. That's a swing from 6-3 to 5-4, and maybe we at least have a backbone in there instead of okay, I don't want to get in trouble because I'm an attorney who does practice and ways like that. But, I'll say it, just a slimy political succubus of a Supreme Court issuing,
Right.
which is
And you're
what
right, Andrew. You're right, Andrew,
Yeah.
and you shouldn't be afraid to say that
Yeah.
because you know what? It's the truth. And the thing is, make a very interesting point, and that is because we get all the time, and I've been getting it recently. Oh man, I don't want to be in the union anymore because y'all are just leaning on one side, and all your messages is this and that.
Yeah.
And I will say unequivocally that AFGE has always supported sides that support us as working employees. When we
Right.
give money, right, at political campaigns and stuff, it's not always to the Democrats. It's that people don't realize that. But right now, what you're saying is so important because we are being, even though you don't want to be political, right, probably in your business, in my business, we are being forced, my
Yes.
brother, to be political right now because of just what you said. It is a political game and a sham, and we are being forced to do that. Do people really want me to tell them support people that don't have your best interest at hand? Support people that are stripping you of your rights or want to take your job, want to do all these things? Do they really want me to say that? Because and I really have gotten flack that, oh, you're a leftist, you're a this, you're a that. You don't know what I am. Or
Right.
but as a union leader, I have to look at the people that represent me, that I consider, or that I represent, and I consider them like my kids, right? And say, if I don't pass them proper good information, Andrew, like what you're saying, right, then shame on me, and I shouldn't be doing what I'm doing. And I like the fact, a lot of times that you speak out, on some things or even take it to the edge, because I think we're in that time, right? And to say, right, for us to say, oh, something like SCOTUS is a good thing now and it's balanced, and we're gonna get decisions, that are just, and that I think is an untruth,
Yeah.
right? And unfortunately, some stuff is going to be decided there, probably. But we need a change, brothers.
Yeah.
I mean, this.
and they're playing the long game too, because you just
Yes.
reminded me of that. As long as we're talking politics, let
Right.
me throw my 2 cents in on that. Is also
Yep.
that they're playing the long game. So like people who vote, like I've talked to Trump voters who were riffed, and I'm trying to help them get their jobs back and appeal
Sure.
their riff, and they didn't realize it was going to happen to them.
Yeah.
And they're coming for you too. Second point on that, there's going to be Trump voters, especially, I'm from Kentucky. I live in DC, but I'm from Kentucky. And there's going to be Trump voters in Kentucky who with these new rules are going to lose their health insurance, they're going to lose their benefits, they don't have jobs, they're in an area where it's really hard to get jobs, and especially in Eastern Kentucky, and it's going to affect them. You know what they did is they made some of this stuff isn't going to hit till after the midterms. So they don't realize it's going to happen to them too till after the midterms. So they're playing the long game. The other thing, what are we hearing floated? I just saw this today where Trump floated not having taxes for people who make less than $200,000. Hey, that's a great idea if you were going to tax the billionaires. That's a great idea. But he's just saying that because he knows that the flack of that great, big, beautiful bill is that all the tax cuts were for billionaires, not for working people. So he's trying to like trick the like, oh, working people, I'm still on your side. No taxes. Well, sir, if you were so on their side, why didn't you push in that big, beautiful bill, no taxes for people on less than $200,000 a year?
Right.
Instead of pushing all the billionaire tax cuts that you pushed.
Yeah.
And so, what were you doing? That should have been your focus. And that big, beautiful bill that barely passed, that's never going to happen. And people don't realize it. He's never going to do that. He's never going to not tax the people making less than $200,000. I mean, if he does, props to you, Trump. Like, then you actually are doing something cool for the working people. I've yet to see it. It's all
I was going to say it'd be the first time.
Right.
It is, Andrew. It would be the favorite.
I'm still paying $9 a carton for eggs here in DC. I mean, I think I can get the eggs in Kentucky for a lot cheaper.
I think he's very good at this. He's very good at showing you a shiny object on this hand while he's making his moves with the other.
Pay no attention to the left hand.
Don't pay attention.
He's a pro to that.
Yeah, I did want to say, Andrew, I did want to tell you, even attorneys have a right to protected speech. So I'm happy that you can talk about.
Right. As someone who makes their living suing the government, I still have to be very careful.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting though that you brought that up, and you said earlier, Andrew, because we've even noticed within AFGE, right, that attorneys are being what I classify as muzzled. Insofar as giving opinions and it's getting to be a very dangerous, kind of thing. That's why I think I find you very refreshing, right? That you will take it to that line, and do that. And I mean, I think it has to be done now. I don't think we can be complacent. I don't think we can sit back. Right. I don't think we can quit. I don't think we can any of these things, right? And I do want to make a point because I know we can't go on forever, with this, and when certainly we're going to do it again when we have more information. But I'm going to say this to everybody, right, that is watching this, right? AFG has been in existence for a long time, okay, and it was in existence decades before collective bargaining was even a thing, before contracts existed. We represented employees successfully and grew, right, during that period of time. So that most people don't know that. And that is a demonstration, right, of the strength of the union and solidarity and being as one. Okay, we have seen attacks similar to this in the past, and Andrew can attest to that, right? And we have come through successfully. This storm, too, shall be weathered, okay? But it's a major storm. We're getting battered, and it's going to take all sailors on deck to do this. Now, what I want people to understand is this. Please don't think, because Doug Collins has said you have no rights, that you have no rights. That's ridiculous. Danny will tell you that. Andrew will tell you that. John will tell you that. You still have rights, brothers and sisters. Now, this podcast is not intended for us to go in to all those avenues, okay? And we still all have to get guidance, right, on what this thing looks like. But I loved the podcast with Andrew and Danny the other day when Andrew kept saying, don't jump off the bridge. I love that. Okay, now is not the time to panic and run or jump off the bridge. Now is the time to reset, figure out what's going on. And I can tell you, there's going to be a lot of litigation and a lot of different things. We can't get into all of it now, okay? And we certainly don't want to show our hands all the time, on what we're doing, right? Because they're doing a pretty good job without us assisting them, right, in coming after us. So let's not help them anymore. But what I don't want to hear is that the unions or anybody else that is assisting is going to be ineffective, that we can't do anything, that is simply a falsehood.
Yeah.
Okay. And over the next probably, days or weeks, right, we're going to do more here on Rights Watch to talk about what people's avenues are, right, moving forward with this situation we're in right now. And I think somebody said earlier, right, this isn't going to be forever. It might have been me. This isn't going to be forever, right? And we don't know. This could change. Things are changing. I think Andrew could attest to that in a New York minute right now. With somebody deciding.
John,
Yeah,
yeah, John, like they say, bad don't last forever.
you're right. You're
That's why
right.
you see certain people running around with masks on.
That's
But
what you're right. You're right.
Yeah.
But the main message I think is don't give up hope, all right?
Yeah.
Because that's what they want you to do.
Yeah.
They're trying to destroy us in every way possible, right? And they want us even to not be certain within ourselves
Yeah.
about what we're doing and sowing the seeds of chaos, right? And they're doing very well at it. So what we need to do is continue to be informed.
Yes.
God bless Rights Watch, putting us out there and allowing us to do this. We need to continue to educate ourselves, be informed, right? We need people desperately like Andrew Weeks, and Whitney, and they're and anybody that's working hard for
and
working people.
and Danny Rivera and John Hetzel too. We need people like you all,
Well, and
So
you got a good team, right? When you're talking about a group like that, but there's good groups all across this country, right? And we're saying to our brothers and sisters, don't give up hope, don't quit, don't accept what they're telling you is the truth
Yeah.
or is right. Okay. And once again, please do not believe that your rights are gone. Okay. Because Andrew, Danny, and I are here to tell you today your rights are not gone. You still have rights as federal employees. And not only is AFGE going to continue this fight in every capacity, right, from litigation to whatever else we have to do, but people on the front lines like Andrew and his associates and other labor attorneys, right, are going to play critical parts in moving forward, right, with what we're doing here. That's why we're on here together. That's why we work hand in hand, because I'm telling you, brothers and sisters, we are so much stronger together as a group,
Yes.
right? And Andrew, I, and Danny are stronger as a group than individually, right? The collective is always better. So steer the course, right? Hang tight. No, this is not over. It's far from over, right, Andrew? From anybody's perspective.
we podcast today, we fight tomorrow.
That's right, and I
That's right.
love that. There's the second T-shirt.
Get us a
Andrew.
T-shirt with that. Yeah.
We podcast today and
Or a
fight
coffee
tomorrow.
mug.
Yeah, but we're fighting for you guys, and that's why we're here. And we wanted to come out and make a statement today because we know we're getting an influx of calls and emails about what this means. Is the union gone? Can people represent me anymore? Can you come to a wine garden with me? And we're going to answer all those questions for you guys coming up here in the near future. It may not be all three of us at once. This is a great thing. I love it. Like Andrew said, this is the first time the three of us have been together. Hopefully sometime we'll be together in the same room.
Yeah.
Boy,
Joe, we're gonna do a palate cleanser. We're gonna do a palate cleanser one where we step back from all these problems. Danny and I have talked about it, but I think you got to be on this one and we just talk about. We do a podcast on the history of labor rights.
Yeah, that's awesome.
From an interesting perspective,
Yeah.
interesting perspective too. And it'll be a fun pod. we've had to delay it because there's been so many just crazy
Yeah.
stuff happening in the interim. But man, Danny, we're gonna have fun on that one,
Oh,
and it'll be
yeah.
a palate cleanser. We're not gonna have to.
It'll be a good time, and I was hoping that would be our first podcast, the three of us. Unfortunately, we had to get together under these circumstances. But John, Andrew, I'm so grateful for the both of you, and for people like you who, amongst all the chaos that we have right now, speak out and really talk to the people. And I think we're at a time where we need something like this. And to all of our bargaining unit employees, to everybody that's out there, I just want to let them know, don't react, okay? Do not react. I think it's important that we hold the fort. We hear about how management reacts all the time, right? And I'm sure Andrew and his firm, he hears about that. I'm sure that John has heard it countless times, how management doesn't plan, doesn't think ahead. They just go ahead and take certain decisions, reacting. And this is what this administration is trying to do. They're trying to get you to react, brothers and sisters. And you have to realize that you and I are smarter than that. You and I are smarter to know that if we react and we react the way that they want us to react, then they have the bigger chance of winning. And I will let you know, I will not let them win. And I hope that you and I, hopefully everybody together, stand united. And remember, the union is not, it's not, the little office where we're located. The union is not the individual people that represent you. The union is you and I. All of us are the union. All of us united. It's in the word, united. All of us united make this big thing that we call a union, where we can stand together and fight. Okay? So hear me out when I tell you, keep fighting. Stay with us, and we will fight with you to the end. All right? So thank you. Thank you both again. Andrew, John, it's such a pleasure to have you. And I'm sure we'll be here together again, especially after we start hearing more instructions down the line from the national office. But thank you both so much.
Danny, and thank you for thank you for doing Rights Watch and giving us a platform and an opportunity to go before people and say this. And what a beautiful thing is, and thank you to Andrew, because what a beautiful thing. A lot of lawyers would not give their time and give the kind of effort. And I could do a whole podcast about Andrew, and what he does. But I'm really grateful, right, that you've given the time and been available, especially, for this program and our local, when we've needed help. So thank you, Andrew, and thank you, Danny, for the opportunity to be able to present views here.
Yeah, thank you both. Danny, you're doing a hell of a job on Rights Watch. I hope people smash that like button and subscribe for more important updates. Every show Danny does, he gets better and better at what he does. So you all need to smash that like button, subscribe, and stay tuned. Danny's got some exciting stuff in the works for you.
All right, there you. I couldn't say it better myself, brother. So thank you both. Thank you both for being here. And AFGE will be here, and Rights Watch will be here as well. We are not giving up. So thank you both.
Thank you.